So if we want to bring about the change that we need to desire in our companies, we need to change mindset and behaviors. So we can't just focus in on behaviors alone.
So leadership is about identifying potential, attach value to it, and develop it to the maximum.
I came across a quote by a Russian author, but ultimately what he says about work is this: if one wanted to crush and destroy a man, to mete him out the most terrible of punishments, all that one would have to do is make him do work that was completely and utterly devoid of usefulness and meaning.
I think the important thing is, what I'm trying to say is, you lead automatically because you're born to lead. You don't lead automatically because you're appointed to lead.
I think if you're arrogant, you always look down on people. And if you miss, by example, if you miss the person, you'll see a carpet, you see nothing. Being humble and you look up to people, if you miss the person, at least you'll see the light, you'll see heaven. So for me, it's that kind of leadership for me was who I am.
And one of the things we've come to learn is that when we talk about culture, and culture being truly what we believe is a competitive advantage, culture actually all is about how we connect as human beings, and that's what sets companies apart at the end of the day, actually. We are going to experience some things together, so it's not only going to be me talking all the time. So I hope you're ready to maybe just connect with some people around you, because as we think about collaboration, it is about connection. And one of the things we've come to learn is that when we talk about culture, and culture being truly what we believe is a competitive advantage, culture actually all is about how we connect as human beings, and that's what sets companies apart at the end of the day, actually. And so I'm going to be digging into that a little bit. Really, we want to talk today about inspiring excellence. And so there's two concepts in that. One is how we inspire, and the other is how we be excellent. And sometimes I want to think about how do those two things live together. We hear so much in our world today about mandating compliance. And there's lots of checklists and a lot of things you've got to sign off. There seems to be an overemphasis on compliance, and we have great managers that mandate that and manage that. We like to think about something different, about how do you inspire excellence? How do we move away from this thing of mandating compliance? So I want to take us on a bit of a journey today around that. And we're going to dig in. But before we listen and hear some of the theory behind that and some of the things I want to talk about, you have a handout, and there are two pieces of sticky paper on that handout. I would like you to, on the orange piece of paper, just write down the name of the best leader you have ever had. Okay. And just put their name down. You can fold that little piece of paper up and put it in one of your pockets, in your left pocket or in your handbag. I hope this one's not going to be easier for you, but on the other piece of paper, on the green, I'd like you to write the name of the worst leader you've ever had. And if they're sitting next to you, you may just need to have an initial or draw a little picture or something like that. But the worst leader you ever had, you can fold it up and put that in your other pocket, in your right-hand side pocket or the right-hand side of your handbag. We are going to put those away for the moment. We'll come back to them a little later in the session. So as we think about that best leader and potentially worst leader, we know leaders make us feel some way, and we respond to those. So as we dig in today, I'd like you to do one more thing on a piece of paper. You would have also found a little sticky label. And before I ask you to do that, I want to just talk about this concept of inspire. Inspire. Inspire is quite different from motivation. Anybody like to maybe mention what they think is the difference between inspire and motivate?
Taking a chance, yeah. Motivate, you probably have to speak to the person, get them psyched up, that sort of thing. Whereas inspire is more of, I'm looking at the person and their behavior and what they've achieved. So it just inspires me witnessing it.
Okay, so one thing is about looking at somebody else and it creates an inspiration in me. The other piece is I've got to speak something out to try and encourage and that. Yeah, any other thoughts? Good thought. Yeah.
For me, motivation has to do with the external, what I'm seeing on the external, what I'm seeing, like she was saying, but inspiration for me comes from within.
Okay, yeah, great. So very similar. Motivation comes from the outside. It's the stuff we often see. It's the times when we are trying to push somebody or pull them along, and we try and motivate them. And inspire is something that comes from within. And it's the stuff that's sometimes hidden away that we don't see. And so today I want to explore quite a lot of that, of what sits beneath the surface. What's that thing that inspires us? And so I'd like you to think about inspiration as this. It is to fill someone with the urge or the ability to do or feel something. To fill someone with them to have the urge to do or feel something. And probably the operative word there, to feel it. We feel inspired. And inspire, if you think about inspiration, between the I-N and the I-O-N is the word spirit. Spirit, some people would say, is the breath of God. It is the thing that's inside of us, and it's the thing that keeps us going. So I'd like you to, on that piece of paper, think about a word that inspires you on the label, on the sticky label like this. Think about a word that inspires you, and I'd like you to write that word down on this label. Stick it onto your heart, closest to the place where we get inspired. Okay, so there's always a story behind those words, and today I've chosen, and this is the thing, we got different words that often inspire us. Today I've chosen a word I've actually not chosen before, and it's the word pioneer. And you may have heard Jonathan speak about the fact that part of my purpose in life is to be a trusted pioneer. But where did that come from? I remember sitting in a session in the United States in American Airlines, sharing my life story with a couple of strangers, and they said, "Hey, Mike, you're a pioneer. You're a pioneer because you are so happy to just try out something you've never tried out before and help take companies to places perhaps they haven't been before." And so that really inspired me. I thought, wow, I've never thought of myself as a pioneer, but I love adventure, I love travel, I love going to new places. And so I'm really, really inspired by this word, pioneer. If you haven't got your phones yet, it's not the end of the world. We'll see but I hope most people, I think, have. Menti.com, and I'd like you to enter that word, the word that inspires you. Just put your word in. What's interesting about these words? What inspires us? Sorry, positive words, yeah. What else? Yeah, I see nothing there about...
It's got a lot to do with sort of culture and religion to a degree.
Culture, religion, there's care, there's gratitude, there's love, there's imagine, there's courage, empower, connectedness. There's a lot about connectedness. What inspires us is those things that connect us with others.
I also think it's pretty selfless. I mean, most of these words are very outward based rather than inward.
Yeah, there's very little there about, oh, it's for me. It's about, and there's nobody's here is inspired by money or targets or measures. Is there one? Where's the one?
There is one.
There's one. Okay. There's some money. Yeah. There's some money. It's just come in. Just as I said. But generally, it's not something we're inspired by. So that was a bit of a test run. We're going to use Menti to get some other information, just as our experiences as we walk through. Just a little bit about us as we enter into this piece. We truly believe that we can turn culture into our competitive advantage. The companies can copy all other things you do. The one thing they can't copy is how well you work together and connect and collaborate, the extent to which you can really live out the values that live within your organization. That is very hard to copy. And we are finding that makes it stand out. We'll talk about that in a moment. Where does BW Leadership Institute come from? Well, our parent company is called Barry Wehmiller. It was Mr. Barry and Mr. Wehmiller, it was not one person, who created this company. Our parent company manufactures huge, big paper packaging machinery, bottling machinery, cardboard rolls, Colton, toilet paper, anything that makes that type of thing. They make the machines that make that. interesting about thinking about what sort of purpose could be inspiring for a company that makes those types of things. And I'll get onto that in a moment. We have acquired over 100 companies around the world, and the key piece about that is within Barry Waymiller, we've developed a concept called Truly Human Leadership. It's a piece that was a vision of our CEO some 20 odd years back, and he's really worked hard to make sure that that culture is embedded into the company so it will live beyond him. When he leaves, we often see cultures vested in a leader, and then the leader moves on and everything falls apart. So we've worked very hard at bringing about ways to embed, inculcate, develop our leaders to truly lead people in a human way. I think what really stood out for me when I encountered this company was it creates an environment for people to feel they have meaningful work every day, that they feel valued, they feel appreciated, and when they go home every day, the result is they speak better to their spouses and their families and their partners, and the impact that that can have in society keeps us going. Barry Waymiller was visited by some people like Simon Sinek and other thought leaders, and they said to our CEO, hey, stop being so selfish with this. Show the world what's possible, that you can be excellent and you can genuinely care. They are not mutually exclusive things. In fact, when you care, you're more excellent. And so the encouragement was, how do we help the world see and learn from some of the things that we have done? We haven't got it all right. We've made mistakes along the way, but we have certainly got some practices and things that we've done to embed a truly human leadership culture. And so BW Leadership Institute was born out of that. And so our purpose as Barry Waymiller, the purpose is to measure the success by the way we touch the lives of people. The fact that we build machinery is just a means whereby we can continue touching the lives of people and helping people be the best they can be, grow great people. It's just an enabler for us to do that. What we truly believe or imagine is our vision, is we imagine that business and organizations can be a powerful force for good in our world. And we believe it starts with the way we treat our people. We think sometimes we're going to go and do community work when we retire or mission work. And yet as leaders, we've got the opportunity right in our space, 40 hours plus a week, to influence the lives that we have got in our span of care for those 40 hours a week. And the way we treat them has a massive impact in terms of how that multiplies into the society and communities around them. So it's time for us to think about not only are we doing out there and the good for there, which is good, but also does that actually mirror what we are doing inside? And so we'll speak about that as we go through. What does culture have to do with business? Well, the interesting thing is it's a virtuous circle. The more that we grow our people, at the end of the day, the more our business grows. And the more our business grows, the more opportunity we have to grow our people. The one thing we know for sure, nobody will love your business until your people do. Nobody will love your business until your people do. Why? Because the people out there encounter people. It's not clients, it's not customers. At the end of the day, it's people and people. And that's just how we connect together. So just a little bit about what we do, and this gives a bit of a frame of our work, and then we'll jump into some real deeper concepts around this. We always believe that we need to start with why. Why are we here? Why do we exist? And so today I want to explore a little bit about purpose and what inspiring purpose looks like and feels like. But why do we exist? Beyond just making money. Yes, we need money. We need money to support us and make sure we can continue delivering on our why. We also very intent to ensure that we can listen to our people, to truly hear what's going on in the organization, to engage with them, to gather input, to see where they are really in flow and things are working, and when sometimes there are frustrations. But really how we can live out our purpose on our best day more continuously. And then the interesting thing about culture that I've come to learn, we often think culture is just about behaviors and that our leaders must behave in better ways and we must behave in better ways. But what we've come to realize that culture, if we're going to align for performance, is both behaviors and it is about systems. So we can have the best values in the world and the most incredible leaders, and we've got systems that don't support us and really don't work and frustrate us. We haven't got a great culture. And the flip side is true as well. We can have brilliant systems that manage us and define us and everything, and our behaviors are really not conducive to that, people are not going to be able to perform. And so our work is really, how do we build intentional cultures, that we're intentional about who we are and how we behave, and how do we continuously look at removing the frustration so people can just do their work better, more meaningfully, and feel like they've done something significant in their day. Why is this all so important? We are in a changing, constantly changing world, probably changing faster than it's ever changed before. So I just want to take you on a bit of a journey of why this culture piece has become so important. It wasn't long ago where we were all living in the agrarian age. And I know you as an organization support people probably who are still living in the agrarian age, who are still farming just for the purpose of meeting their basic needs. We have to only look back 1 or 2 generations in our lives, and we've probably got some of our predecessors who were living in that time. We then moved into what we call the industrial age in the mid-1800s, which was just a way to say, how do we make all this stuff be better accessed and provide that into society and communities? So organizations were formed for a purpose to be able to supply and be able to do more. The big thing in the industrial age is that all we valued was quality, skill, and labor. So Ford Motor Company, when they started, they had 2 rules. You could only go to the toilet once on your shift. If you wanted to go more than that, you had to clock out and lose some of your pay. And you weren't allowed to smile on shift. Okay? So leave your emotions in the parking lot. What did it say? All we really were concerned with is bring your hands to work. You're just part of the machines to make the machines work. We then moved into a phase where we said, hey, we want to make this stuff faster and better. And so we moved into what we call the information age in the mid-1950s, or thereafter, into the information age, where we started valuing intellectual capital. We wanted people to work for our organizations who not only brought their hands, but also their heads. We wanted them to think more creatively, to improve, etc. And so that became a really important piece. In the last 20, 30 odd years, we have moved into what we call the consciousness age. What is consciousness? Sorry? Being aware. Yeah. We are probably more aware than any other generation in all of history has ever been. We have access to more information than the wealthiest person had only 30 years ago. The biggest libraries had 30 years ago. We have access to way more information. We are more aware about, in fact, what's right and wrong. Who would have cared 50 years ago whether Shell fracked in the Karoo or not? Today we care. We're aware what we're doing to our environment, and so we're doing things to try and safeguard and protect that. We are just more conscious. Our parents perhaps worked in places where they could have been actually abused in the workplace. As long as they got their check at the end of the month or the week, that's all the reason why they went to work. Today, people won't tolerate that. They'll make a choice to often leave. Certainly your talent won't work in places like that. We're just more conscious, and so it's the heart that's really important as well. And that's the transitions we've been seeing in our world. So as we think about that, I'd like to hear from you a little bit about what do you think great leaders do? We think about these shifts in our world, we think about what inspires us. If you were to just call out some words about what do great leaders do, what would they be for you?
I think they have long-term vision and not just short-term.
Long-term vision, yeah, good.
Trust in their team.
They trust in their team, yeah.
I think they allow you to bring your whole self into the work environment.
Okay, so you can bring your whole self. Bring your whole self. They allow you to come fully to work, head, heart, hands, into the workplace. What else? Think of that great leader in your one pocket. They empower you. Yeah. They motivate. Yeah.
Serve.
They serve you. Yeah. How does serve look for you, Jonathan? How does it look like when a leader serves?
On you, no.
Yeah.
When serve is really sacrifice or giving of oneself.
Yeah.
To the next person for their betterment. I suppose.
Okay, so giving to somebody else for their betterment. Yeah.
They lead by example.
They lead by example.
They see potential that you might not see yourself.
Okay, yeah. Sometimes they're the ones that see that gift in you that you haven't seen and bring that out, but they may see that potential in you.
I think they care further than just what you can bring, obviously, to the company, but they care about your emotions, your life, your home situation. They care.
Okay, they genuinely care for you as a human being, beyond your role. Like they care for you as a person. Yeah. What else? Come, we've got a whole page that we can fill up.
They have integrity.
They have integrity. Yeah, they have integrity. They walk their talk.
They share
They share. What do they share?
information, knowledge,
Okay.
experience, skill.
Okay, so they're giving. They're very open to share information, etc. Yeah,
They're
skill.
authentic.
They're authentic. Okay, they're real. You just know they are who they are. Yeah. What else do great leaders do?
They develop you.
They develop you. Yeah, they develop people. Yeah.
They listen.
They listen. Yeah, sure. Wow. They truly listen to really understand and hear. Yeah.
They give you advice.
They give you advice. Yep. They can give you advice. They can guide you.
They speak to the hearts of their people.
They speak to the hearts of their people. And how do they do that?
They engage what inspires you.
Okay. Yeah, engage, inspires. They may well know what that word that you've put on your chest, they may know that in you and be able to meet that need to keep inspiring you. Yeah.
And I think they forgive because you make mistakes and then they forgive you.
Yeah, great leaders forgive. You do make mistakes. They may even forgive themselves because they also make mistakes, which is a piece in that I'll call out. Great leaders are vulnerable. Yeah, they do vulnerability. They're happy to say, hey, I don't know it all, and I make mistakes. Yeah.
Leave a legacy.
They leave a legacy. You remember them. Hey? They leave a legacy, yeah. So the interesting thing about this list is no matter where we do it in the world, whether it's in the United States, whether it's here, whether it's in India, no matter what industry we do it with, no matter what group of people, we come up with a similar list of words because we actually all know what great leaders do. I suppose the question for us is, how often are we showing up as leaders like this for our people, and can we do that consistently and continuously so that one day that word that inspires you and you think about a great leader, is the great leader the person that you are, that people experience in you. This actually was a huge study done by Harvard Business Review, asking people, like 40,000 people, about what great leaders do, and this is the list they came up with. Not too different to what you did. We didn't need that, actually, because we really do know what great leaders do. It does take, though, reminders for us, and it takes consciousness about living that out on a continuously basis. And so we'll dig into that a little bit as we go through. So what does this really speak to? Culture, great leaders, what do they do? We've used this little formula to guide us in our work for a long time, and we truly believe that if you're going to build long-term value and you're going to create value for all your stakeholders, you've got to have good capability. You are people who know how to do the work, they are knowledgeable, they are skilled, they have the right attributes for the job. There was a notion around we're going to win the war for talent, and this is what we try to fight for. But what we have come to learn and experience is that if we want to create long-term sustainable value, there are two other ingredients we want to multiply our good capability with. The one is affinity, a sense of belonging, and us sharing the aims and the ethos of this business. I'm actually proud to work here, and I'm proud to what this business stands for. And the other one is alignment, that we all know what it takes to build customer value and success. And I know my role in that, and I know how I play a part in helping us achieve our purpose. And companies that can get those two things right can multiply that impact of capability. They can go way further with that. The interesting piece is, how does this get built? How do we foster an environment where affinity and alignment is very strong? And so we came across this piece of work. It was done by a guy named Jim Ware, And he discovered that companies that have high affinity and alignment have deep trust in their leaders. Deep trust in their leaders. And he actually studied investment companies. Now, if anybody knows about investment companies, asset managers, they are pretty cutthroat, hard-driven organizations. And he went and studied these, and these are the three things he found in them when he dug in to say what built that trust. The first was competence. Hey, I trust my leader because they know what they're doing, they know what they're saying, they know their field. But I trust them too because they genuinely care. They care for me as a human being. They care for my career growth. They care that I have the right tools to do the job. It's not that we hug everybody every day and all feel nice, but they care that I can do my work in a way that's removing frustration for me. And that I'm congruent. What does that word congruent mean? Anybody know? If I trust my leader because they're congruent. Anybody know? Get a guess at it?
They say what they mean.
They say what they mean. They're constant. They're consistent. Congruent. We learned them in maths in our days, or geometry, of angles being congruent. They're aligned. Who I am on the inside is how you experience me on the outside. I'm congruent. I'm aligned. And that's what builds leadership trust. So on your handout, I'm going to ask you to do something quickly. And this is around the work of leadership. If we are going to become these great leaders, what great leaders do, they're trusted that they're competent, care, and congruent. Leaders spend some time doing things differently. So at the bottom of that, you will see there that there's the work we have to do in our business. Okay? So the work in our business is sorting out the problems, signing off, solving my people's work, being those approval of authority. It's a time and the energy I invest in the busyness of the work. But then there's the work of leadership. And the work of leadership, we would typically break up into three things. The one is time that I work on myself, the energy and time that I invest in my own personal development. That may look like leadership retreats, or a TED Talk, or reading a great book, or going on a course, or coming here. Actually, you're just right now investing in yourselves by being here in this room. Great leaders work on themselves because they don't just show up like that by their own accord. They're constantly looking and evaluating themselves. Working on their team, we see lots of examples of empowering, of coaching, of developing, of listening. That's the energy and time I spend in developing my people. And then there's working on my business, which is the time I take out to think about where we're going with our business, how can we improve it, how can we do things differently. It's working on my business. I'd like you to just give a rough allocation of how much time a week do you spend in each of those. And I know in this room there are both what we call coaches and players. We're all leaders in our own field, but some of you got to get on the field and play more than you coach. But just give a sense of how much time do you spend on yourself, on your team, on your business, and in the business. So in the interest of time, ordinarily I'd get you to have some conversation about that with the person next to you. The purpose I asked you to do it is just for you to have a look at it and say, are you happy with that? And I wonder how many people in this room have more time in that working in the business that they would like, and less time maybe working on the business. Particularly if you're a people leader in this room, might say, oh wow, there's some awareness and consciousness here for me, that am I actually creating time to do what great leaders do? And it's interesting because we like doing this, eh? Yeah, it makes us feel good. We walk at the end of the day and say, I achieved something. Doing that has long-term results. It doesn't happen tomorrow. I don't see that growth in that person. It takes time and work, and it's sometimes messy and it's hard. But that is the real work of leadership. It's less tangible. We don't get that immediate feeling of like, wow, I've been successful. It is the real work of leadership. Why do people leave organizations? Sorry? But they're unhappy. Why are they unhappy typically?
Because of other people.
Because of other people. Who they're largely unhappy with.
So you don't quit a job, you quit a boss.
Exactly. It is true. If you truly ask people, hey, and you do the exit interviews and they'll tell you they're going for a better career prospect, more salary. Hey, if we were really treating people superbly, they wouldn't be leaving. They say that 80% of people, genuinely, if you went and asked them, leave because of their boss, 20% of people because of other stuff. If I work for a leader like this, it's going to be hard for me to leave. Even sometimes for more money, it may be hard for me to leave. We have a saying in our organization, pay people fairly and treat them superbly. And actually, that's what we want. We just want to be treated really well. Okay. Yes, money is important, but if we're treated really well, that can go a whole lot further than that little bit of extra money. And so I wonder how you think about the statement that you can't motivate another person. You can only create the environment in which they can change themselves. You can't motivate another person. We can only create an environment where we're inspired. Yeah.
What does that mean exactly?
Okay. Any thoughts in the room? What do you think that means?
Just basically living those values.
Yeah.
So being an environment where you constantly maybe living those values to inspire the people around you.
Yep. Living the values may create the environment. What else?
It's like the seed. You can't make it grow, but if you work the ground, the seed will come out.
Okay. The seed, you can't make it grow, but are we making the soil fertile? Allowing that seed to germinate? Hey, am I helping people see what their gifts are, helping them give the opportunity to express those gifts and being recognized for them? They're going to motivate themselves. Okay, I don't need to do much for them. If I help them see the goal and the purpose and it's inspiring, if I engage them in the work that they're doing and how can we do this work better, if I'm giving them feedback regularly about what they're doing really well and where they could do better, I'm creating the environment that they can motivate themselves. And so, yeah, we have a whole piece on how do we create intrinsic motivation where people want to motivate themselves. We try to motivate people through rewards. Fix this problem, you get a bonus. Or through consequence, don't fix this problem and you'll get fired. If that's how we want to manage, just get HR to design a whole lot of good HR processes. The real work of leadership sits in between that where people say, hey, I want to fix this problem. And that's about creating the right environment for people to motivate themselves, to change themselves. People say to me sometimes like, yeah, okay, we throw big bonuses, that'll motivate people. If I don't have a need for that money, I'm not necessarily going to respond to that. If I understand what my team members' needs are, I can create the environment. If I understand what inspires them, I can create the environment where they can inspire themselves. So, what is culture? Spoken a little bit about leadership and leadership creating things. What is culture?
It's the way you do things.
The way we do things around here. Hey, I walk into many companies, you get just a sense they do things differently from other places. Our families, we do things differently. We may all eat, we all celebrate perhaps birthdays or religious festivals or whatever, but we may do that different. Even the way we eat our meals at night. Some people say, hey, we sit at the table, 7 to 9, we're here, everybody's here. Others say you can come and go as you like. Others say, well, we'll sit in front of the television, it's okay. What's right, what's wrong? It's culture. It comes from somewhere. And so the way things are done around here is a reflection of the values, the beliefs, behaviors of leaders, past and present. The way we do things in our families comes sometimes from the past. And then there are things that we've tried to shift and change and say, we're going to do it differently. Interesting piece, when we say we're going to do it differently, the older you get, often you catch yourself, oh, I sound just like Dad. Okay. That DNA is so deep, it's so hard. And for me, there's a message about that in an organization is no different. The way we do things around here is sometimes so deep, and it's part of our DNA, it takes a lot of consciousness and hard work to actually say, I'm going to change this, I'm going to shift this. And so knowing that journeys you are on, and you've embarked on some new things and that, sometimes it can feel discouraging, like, are we seeing the results? It takes a lot of hard, long work to change those habits. So we have a view of culture, and this is just a framework we developed to say, like, these are the different types of cultures we typically experience. Because if I ask you to describe this culture, it's quite hard to describe. We feel culture, but it's quite hard to actually just depict it. I don't know if anybody's read Good to Great here in this room. Anybody? Jim Collins, Good to Great, a few heads around. A number of companies we work with said, help us move from good to great. When we get in there and we say, whoa, you're not even good yet. Maybe there's something else to be done. And so we find cultures that could be spread across any one of these 5 types of being. The first one, I'm going to run through them quite quickly, but just to speak about toxic, it's unsafe. Toxic is where people feel abused, disrespected, stifled, they are humiliated, they are shamed. It is unsustainable because your great talent will not stay there any longer. They may have done that 20, 30 years ago, but these places are unsustainable. There's a lot of fear. And in fact, the only reason why they're toxic is because the leader has a lot of fear. Fear they're not going to actually be able to perform and meet whatever they need to meet. And so they end up expressing behaviors like that. The rigid space is safe. We make it safe through rules. But we also play it safe. Okay, so we walk a little bit like on eggshells. So it's a very cautious environment. All the decisions are made centrally. There's sometimes bureaucracy involved because we put systems on systems on systems. We find that when there are rules, we can find who breaks the rules and we can find somebody to blame for that. The reason why companies have rigid cultures is because they want to try and create certainty. They want to minimize their risk. And that's quite a good thing in one hand. But we know we live in a VUCA world, a volatile, uncertain, complex, ambiguous world, a world that is changing so fast that I'm not sure I can be certain about what's going to happen tomorrow. And so the danger of companies that are sitting here is when the strong winds blow, when the tough times come, they tend to break the easiest. Their cultures are not very strong, they're pretty weak to walk through those choppy waters. A good space is a bit of what we call the American dream. It's a little bit about what a lot of our companies in our world have been chasing to try and build and be. It's good, it's not bad. We're very driven, respected, efficient. There's a lot of focus on professional growth, on knowledge, so information age, think back to that. Short-term profit. They've landed up to be quite me-centric focus because there's a lot of focus on achievement and ambition and career growth, etc. So it becomes quite competitive and individualistic. Not bad. Then we get the integrated space, which we would call a great culture. And the big shift between good to great, between optimistic and integrated, is that very word integrated. We realize that we're part of a system. We're not an island. And our teams are not islands. We actually need each other to really do well, and we are part of a system. And we are only as strong as every part of that system is firing. And so we really value collaborating as teams. We really involve the people in the challenges that we face. We appreciate people for the efforts that they're making in helping us to be and fulfill our purpose. We focus not just on professional growth, but we also focus on personal growth. And that's quite linked to the EQ piece that you see further down, emotional intelligence. It's not just a fad of the day. We cannot collaborate as teams if we don't know what our triggers are, what my triggers are, what your triggers are, and how we can get past that, and how we can manage and really accept and understand each other. There's a lot of focus on shared vision, integrity, and I just want to pause on this word empowered here, because you actually called it out there. It's interesting what these organizations, what results in people who work in these organizations. When you are driven by rules, and you are told what to do, how to do it, and when to do it every day, we get a sickness called learned helplessness. Yeah. People don't know how to think because they've never been allowed to think, and they've never been taught to think. And so we as leaders get frustrated because couldn't they see it? It was so obvious. And yet they're locked in a prison of learned helplessness. And so this journey here, in a way, is if we can help people get to this piece, that means they feel competent in their role and their work. They feel confident in who they are. That's the first step. And then if we can move to, well, hey, we can start empowering you and help you to learn how to think and solve problems, then we move into a whole different space. And that sets us up for, in many ways, the last culture shift, which is the one that we call inspired. And inspired is what we call an endearing culture. So that word endearing, when you hear that word endearing, what do you see that means? Long-term sustainable. What do you say when I'm endeared to somebody? You feel warm, yeah. It's actually like care. It's like love, actually. Endearing companies create a space of care, and dare I say it in business even, a place of love. They love all their stakeholders, their customers, their suppliers, their people, their communities, because the big shift from here to here is realizing not only are we a part of a system, we're part of an ecosystem. And we're only going to thrive in our business and what we do if this whole ecosystem is thriving. If our communities aren't thriving, we have no work. We have no business. If our employees, our team members aren't thriving, hey, they're going to take us down. Okay, we're going to end up in a terrible place. So it's about valuing all stakeholders. It's realizing I don't own this place. I hold it in stewardship. I want to pass it on in a better way than I found it. It's realizing we're connected and we have a spirit and we're here for the greater good. We're here for a higher purpose, not just making money. We are actually adding value to society in what we do every day. And then I spoke about that journey of learned helplessness to confidence, to empowered, to the point that these companies can actually allow people to make decisions right at the front line, decentralized team-based decisions, because we know they're able, we know they align to our values, they know they will make decisions with good intent. And you will see further down here is the concept of servant leadership. And Jonathan called out serve, and I like the way he expressed it. At the end of the day, for me, servant leadership is just helping others be the best they can be. Here we get managers who want others to make me look the best. Here, I want others to be the best. In fact, I want them to be better than I have. And that's what we want for our children. So if I truly look at the people in my span of care every day, I just want the best for them. Our CEO has a wonderful saying, can we see everybody that walks in our door every day as somebody's precious child? Because what do you want for your child? You actually want them to be working in a place at least like one of those two, and you want them to be happy, have meaningful work, be successful in what they do. That's what we want. Do we have that same thing for people that walk into our door every day? So, the one piece about this, we're never at one place. Actually, there are elements of all of this. I can walk into some really inspiring companies and I can find toxicity. Okay, you will find it. It's like our bodies. We all have some toxins in place. It's just if the toxin is very high, it could end up making us very sick or end up actually killing us. Yeah.
Mike, where would you place something like South Africa's state-owned enterprise?
Where would you place them? So the interesting piece on that is we've looked at different ownership models across this and said, how far can different ownership models actually go? And we have a view that state-owned enterprises would find it very hard to go beyond rigidity based on the current way they are led, which is very politicized, short-term tenure of leaders, and very focused on audit and compliance. It just re-entrenches that, yeah, so probably right. A listed company may be quite hard to get beyond good if you've got uninvolved shareholders that are boards that put pressure on companies. Owner-led or private companies have way more opportunity to be here. Way more opportunity. So yeah.
I'm sorry, I just want to, the SQ, is that like the sense?
Okay, great question. So SQ, EQ is emotional intelligence, SQ is spiritual intelligence. And we don't mean that from necessarily a religious standpoint, but what are people looking for in their religion? They're looking for meaning and purpose. And so for many of us in this room, maybe that's what our purpose is surrounded or oriented by. Maybe for others it's different. Companies like this create the environment for people to come and express and fulfill their purpose and feel like they're doing purposeful work. Yeah.
Mike, would you also say that the bigger your company, the harder it is to get to an inspired phase, because you have such a far-reaching, and if there are lots of levels, because when I think of our company and what we do, I mean, this is head office, right? We have so many sites in South Africa where it might be completely different. We might be sitting at the top of the scale, they might be down. So how do you even do the geography kind of?
It can. I look at our parent company, we spread out over the United States, Europe, China, India, North Africa, and actually now in South Africa. And we've created quite a consistent approach to that, but it takes a consciousness. So again, go to menti.com. And I know I'm pushing you to say one place, because as I've just said, we normally have a spread, but there is a predominant feel. Nobody's going to know who you are when you put this up. So go on menti.com, the same code, 303590. Just put where you think you are predominant, and don't follow the pack. Okay, so we're somewhere between rigid and good. Good being the strongest, the sense of our areas. We're pretty good. Quite a strong sense of rigidity, a little bit of unsafe in here. Somebody feeling like they're working in a really loving, endearing place. Because I also want to go and work there. Hey, yeah, cool. Where do you believe the AFGRI group is overall? If you had to just step back and say, look at AFGRI Holdings, the whole group, made up of all our bits and pieces, where would you put us as a whole? Good. So yeah, we're getting quite a similar picture. Quite a similar picture. So there is a sense sometimes about that leadership past presence filtering through. By the way, this doesn't have to be that we all want to be endearing, but the last question there is, where would you like to see the group? Good. And there's some realists in this room, knowing that it's very hard to get to endearing before we become integrated and great. And so the principle behind this little framework is, if you're rigid right now, don't think you can go straight to endearing. It needs to build on, and there's certain processes for us to think about that. There may be some people in the room that say like, oh wow, endearing all sounds nice, it's all loving, and a beautiful place to be. The interesting piece around this is some study and work done on endearing companies, and it's written up in a book called Firms of Endearment. And when the researchers, Raj Sisodia, when he set out on this, he selected companies for their endearing qualities, not for performance at all. Jim Collins, for those of you that read Good to Great, will know he selected companies for financial performance and then tried to work out what made great companies great. Raj went a completely different view. When Raj did his work, he thought, well, these companies will probably be similar to the great. Actually, what he found out when they looked at the results is that the average annual return of firms of endearment are 13% as opposed to the average in the United States of the S&P 500 at 4%. Interesting thing, look at what happened here. You know what happened in 2007 and 8, we had our crash. These companies felt the crash just the same, but look at their recovery. Strong, resilient cultures recover faster. The message actually for me has been, culture's not for the good times. Culture's actually for us during the tough times to help us walk through. Yeah.
Just give one or two examples of such those companies? The big ones we might know?
Yeah, Honda would fall in there, Toyota would fall in there, Google would fall in there, Caterpillar I think was in there, I'm not sure if they still are, Barry Wehmiller would fall in there, so there's a couple of those companies. You know, the one thing that stood out for me just as I talk about that, you think like, yeah, some of those like Google, we think these cultures, all this culture work is for these high-tech companies, Google's and that. And when I walked into Barry Wehmiller and saw it's blue-collar workers turning machines around and we can create similar cultures is a really encouraging thing for me. So just this another view of it, and this is interesting in a way. So the good to great companies and the firms of endearment, in the short term, 3 years, similar performance, 5 years, but look at over 10 years. And that's the thing, endearing companies have a long-range view on their performance as well. It's not about the short-term focus. Okay. How do companies really get this right? And so just talk a little bit about this. Is that we have to focus, this is not all about just culture. It means we've got to get our strategy right as well. We need to know what our goals are, our roles, give people great feedback on that. We need to know our values and principles. When we get that right, we find people are committed to their roles and take responsibility. But it is informed by a compelling vision and inspiring mission. Interesting too, as we think about culture, our external stakeholders experience our brand. Our internal stakeholders, our team members, experience our culture. 30, 40 years ago, we could have branded ourselves as one thing, and how we treated our people could have looked differently. Today, at best, that's a glass wall, and message gets around very quickly if those two things aren't consistent. And so this is really important for us. Look at these values. Respect, integrity, communication, excellence. What do you think about those values? Good values, yeah. Good values. These were the values of a company named Enron. Some of you may know it. Enron had a significant ethical collapse. One of the first companies in the world to be called out for corporate fraud. This is what the CFO had to say while he was spending 5 years in prison. Culture starts at the top. It doesn't start, doesn't start at the top with pretty statements. Employees will see through empty rhetoric and will emulate the nature of top management decision making. A robust code of conduct can be emasculated by one action of the CEO in a day, or the CFO. Okay. And the real piece in that is, it's all very well to have these pretty values on the wall, but if they're not lived, they are worthless. And so great values for us are really used to guide and solve every problem we face, requires awareness and constant understanding of what they mean for us and how we live them, and it involves engaging people in that, and to know it's not a program, it's a continuous process of adopting that. And so we're going to look at a piece on values and purpose now. And the piece on purpose, I want to just refer back to another crisis that happened with a company that dealt with this crisis in a very different way. So Johnson & Johnson, most of us are familiar with their product. They have a vision that says we believe our first responsibility is to the doctors, the nurses, and the patients, to mothers and fathers, and all others who use our products and services. That's our first priority. Some of you may be too young to remember, but some of you may remember there was a issue with Tylenol in the United States. Tylenol was found in one state, in one city, to have cyanide traces in it. Now, they don't know where the cyanide traces came from. They suspect it was intercepted. It didn't happen in the factory of Johnson & Johnson. Johnson & Johnson, because of this vision and purpose, decided against actually the wishes of the FBI, because they said they didn't want to create panic. They decided to take all Tylenol off the shelves for the whole of the United States of America. Huge cost to themselves. It resulted in them being the ones who invented the fact that you can now have to peel that little thing off the caps of your bottles, of your pharmaceutical bottles. But the biggest piece was here. When those executives got into their war room to decide how to deal with this, they were guided by this purpose. That is their first responsibility. Doesn't matter what the cost could have sunk them. And so there's a really, really deep piece in that. Yes. Quickly on Menti. 303590, same code. I want you just to quickly type in there as briefly as possible what you believe the purpose of your part of the business is, whatever it is. If you're Full Africa, it's fine. If you're Afgri Holdings, if it's Afgri, put down, what do you think? What is your vision or your purpose? A lot of you have got, in the sense, the security, food security in Africa. Generally, you've all got a piece of the food security in there, which pretty means it's pretty well entrenched. I want to take us on a little journey about to what extent does that inspire us and compel us to action every day. If you really want to know what it is, it could be different based from where you're from, but an enabler to food security, to drive food security, to transform the lives of millions of Africans economically, socially, and spiritually through food processing. The big thing about a purpose is, does it compel us to action and does it inspire? Does it compel us to action and does it inspire? And the reason why this is so important, at the end of the day, we are driving results, aren't we? We're trying to get to a result and we take action to do that. Those actions, we often have many debates about, and we could have many differing views, because all of those actions are informed by a perception that we have, what we think is right in the moment. And so what does a purpose do for us? A purpose inoculates us from multiple perceptions. If we're really clear on what that purpose is, we inoculate ourselves from having all these multiple perceptions and getting stuck in like, what's the best route to follow and where do we go? I'm going to talk a bit about inspiring purpose for a moment. And I'm going to show you 2 video clips. Okay. The one is from the purpose of the one company is to be the world's largest toy company. That's their purpose. Okay, so in that you get a sense, they want to be the top, they want to be the biggest. The other one's purpose is to inspire and develop the builders of tomorrow. To inspire and develop the builders of tomorrow. When you watch these, I want you to think about what is being communicated and how does it make you feel?
Barbie! I just moved into my newest, biggest dream house ever. Open it up. It's huge. 3 floors. Life in the dream house. An amazing kitchen. Let's have dinner, turkey, and dessert. A pink elevator. The ultimate Barbie closet. The second elevator just for fashion. 2 elevators plus a musical shower. Life in the dream house. Dream house playset adults assembled. Batteries not included. Dogs sold separately.
What's being communicated?
Plastic.
Pink.
Let my daughter not see that.
Let my daughter not see that ad. Why? She's going to nag you, eh? Nag you, and you don't want that. No.
I don't know if I've got that. Do that.
Who's this ad aimed at? Yeah, those little girls, and boys too, by the way. There are Kens as well. Interesting thing about Barbies, I like sometimes if you look in your house, if you're older and you've got kids, have you kept those? Their arms probably came off. Sometimes maybe we have. Yeah, good. So have a look at this one.
We are a team bound by blood, Nan's knitwear, and our own imagination. A team that shares our resources and pools our talent, where we each bring something different to the table. We don't see eye to eye on everything, like bedtimes and Brussels sprouts. But when we're in the game, we're in the zone, because the things we build together live forever. We conceive the inconceivable, bridge the unbridgeable. And when we've built as far as we can fathom, I see a guy who will always do that extra brick. With me, let's build.
Communicate for you. Values. Yeah, what else? Relationship, connection. Yeah. Love. Yeah. Also communicated what a terrible father I was. Didn't do more of that. Hey, you know what? I know exactly where our box of Lego sits up in the cupboard, and on Friday we had heard that we're going to be grandparents of a grandson, and I can't wait to make it up because I'm going to get that Lego down. And all those pieces are there. They're virtually indestructible. I mean, those Legos, you can hardly break those things. Yeah. Who's this ad aimed at? Parents. Oh, probably both. But certainly, hey, it inspires me. It inspires me to show up as a better father. Did you notice Lego wasn't even mentioned once through the ad, only at the end? Yeah?
When I read when you said the second one about builders, I told that's the
You knew already. Yeah. Let's build concept. Lego is an association with that. Absolutely, yeah. It has an inspiration. It connects us with something.
But just to be fair to Bobby, I'm going to have to say that they have brought out lots of career goals for girls. Like
Yeah.
They can be doctors, they can be lawyers, they can be...
Okay, good. Glad about that.
You chose like the worst Bobby advert.
But even in a way, if you think about that, and it's great that they are thinking, What are all those things about achieving more, hey? Being more. And in some ways, that other one was about connection, and it just inspired us. And by the way, there is a gender alternative to the Lego story as well. There's another ad with girls in too. It's not just for guys. But really then piece is, are we finding ways to connect and inspire our people around our purpose? Just two other examples quickly. This is a real case of a police department. What typically police departments want to do, the goal is to eliminate crime. But what about if our police department said, hey, we want to build community? Reframes the whole thing. You know, and for us, like we have a manufacturing company, safety is really important. What do most companies drive? Safety is all about reducing lost time accidents because we're going to get scored. And our bonuses are based on that. And we've got to report this to the Department of Labor. But what about if safety is to send our friends home safe to their families and friends every day? What if that's my goal? That's going to inspire me to make sure my space is kept safe, way more than I need to meet one of your targets, Mr. Manager. And it's for us to really find ways to help people be truly inspired. How often do we talk to our people about we are sustaining food security in Africa and what that means and what you're doing every day to help support that and to build that? As great leaders, we'll find ways to continuously keep that at top of people's minds and inspire them with, we're here for a greater good and we're doing something really great. I love this quote. If you want to build a ship, don't drum up your men and give them orders to collect wood and how to distribute the work, but instead teach them to yearn for the vast and endless sea. Teach them to yearn for the vast and endless sea. What's going to happen when we teach our men to yearn for the vast and endless sea? They're going to do it themselves. They're going to build the best boat ever, get me across those seas. I don't have to tell them how to do each little piece. That's about creating the right environment where we inspire people to do it themselves. So the last piece I want to get into is around, we've looked at purpose. We looked at great leaders who create this piece. And the last piece, just talk a little bit about values and this culture piece that we look and how do we understand culture? And so for me, a piece on this starts with, we've got to be smart. Hey, we do need to have the strategy in place. We need to have good technology. We need to have good systems and best practices in our finance. But we also need to be healthy. We want to have minimal confusion. We don't want to have politics. We want people feel motivated and there's high morale. We want to have low people turnover. And it's both of those things that are important. We all agree on that, yeah. The piece is that if we are not healthy, it doesn't matter how smart we are. It's not going to go anywhere. I could be the most intellectually bright person, but if I'm lying on my sickbed, I'm useless, I'm worthless. And when I ask leaders about this, they all nod their heads and say, yeah. And I say, where do you spend most of your time? On the left-hand side or the right-hand side? Working in the business or doing the work of leadership? Mostly we'll say on the left-hand side, hey, and it's quite natural because we've been taught that stuff. It's tangible. We know what levers to pull. This is the harder, messier stuff, the culture piece, creating a healthy organization. And so for us, culture is just the sum total of all behaviors in an organization. Hey, not the values on the wall, the sum total of all the behaviors. The thing about culture, and I think comes to the point just now about how do we do this in a large organization, is to realize and be okay with the fact that all culture is local. So what I mean by that, I have the joy of living in this beautiful city, and I've had the joy of walking that mountain. One of the things you experience when you walk on a mountain like Table Mountain, it looks like one mountain, looks like a beautiful day, but I could just walk up this Platteklip Gorge here, and there could be a cold wind blowing. And I can come up over and come down Indian Fenster, and it's suddenly warm. It's like that in our companies. I could probably walk onto one floor here, and I would find everybody chip still, and I could go to another place, and everybody's loud and joking and carrying on. All culture is local. And where does that come from? It's our different leaders, and the way we work and the things we do. And so we remember that all culture is local. And so earlier we spoke about there's stuff that we only see. It's the stuff that we typically use to try and motivate. And then there's the stuff that inspires us. There's the stuff that sits above the line, and there's the stuff that sits below, the soil, the nutrients. And so the objective stuff is the way we say we get things done. You know, it's the vision and the mission and the values and the structures and the systems and the processes and our procedures and our performance management, all the stuff we see. We say that's how we get things done. But actually there's this piece at the bottom, is the subjective, is the way we really get things done. It sits below the surface. And those come from our historic patterns, our lived values, not the values on the wall, what we actually live. Our attitudes, our unconscious beliefs that we're walking around with, our assumptions, our perceptions, our feelings, our fears. Every day those things are showing up, but they're below the line. We don't talk about them. They're hard to sometimes see. We feel them, we experience them, but they're subjective. In other words, I feel it, I experience this. And so what I want to share with you is a piece of how do we get this aligned? How do we make sure the subjective and the objective are working together? Because that's when we really get collaboration happening. And so alignment for us talks about these 4 human systems, 4 quadrants of human systems. We all show up with individual values and beliefs, and those determine our individual behaviors. And so I often say, if you want to know how somebody behaves, or what they believe, look at how they behave. Don't listen to what they say they believe. Say I value family, but I spend only 5% of time with them, and when I'm there, I'm not present. Hey, do I really value family? What my real values are shaped by this. But then we all come to work, or we all live in a country, and together we form a set of group values and beliefs to say that, hey, these things are the things that we hold dear and important. And we put social structures around those things. We have constitutions and laws and policies. And in a company, we have codes of ethics and all sorts of things to make sure we can live those group culture norms that we've determined. And so this work, for us, is about how do you create alignment between those things. Because what we have found is that truly inspired employees feel a values alignment. Otherwise, I can bring my values into this place. I don't have to compromise them. And I resonate very strongly with the values of this place. And I can bring my purpose and live it out here because it connects and resonates with the purpose of sustainable food security in the world. And I'm excited about that. And I know I can play a role in contributing to that. That's when we get inspired employees, the team members. How do we make this happen? Well, for me, there are 2 other pieces that have to get aligned. And this is the work of leadership, is personal alignment, that our leaders are walking the talk. All the stuff we're putting out there, those objective things, we actually feel and experience from them below the surface because they are completely aligned and they are continuously working towards showing up as a great leader. And, we are working on structural alignment all the time. What does that mean? The way we recruit, the way we induct, the way we performance manage, the way we succession plan, the way we even exit our people, if they decide to leave, is all done in line with our values and our mission. They don't talk to a different thing. So for example, you've got, these are your values, yeah? Well, these are AFGRIs, I think. And I know you might have all some, but it's the group values. You have a value of teamwork. I wonder if I go and look at your performance management system, what's the weighting is between individual and team and the collective? What is our performance management around the team or the individual? And sometimes I've got to call that out to say, we're sending mixed messages if we're focusing too much on the individual and not the team. Are we aligned to our values? And so that's a continuous piece of work to know. And so I'm going to introduce you to a way that we understand culture. Culture is an experiential thing. It's that thing that sits below the line. So how do we make it come alive? Because you can't manage something if you can't measure it. And so we work with something called the 7 levels of consciousness. It was designed by a gentleman called Richard Barrett. So you'll see the Barrett 7 levels of consciousness model. And you will see, if you've got any sort of marketing and or psychological training, you may be familiar with Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And you'll see that quite strongly in the first 3 levels here. What Richard Barrett did is he took the piece of self-actualization and gave that some more definition and meaning. So as a person, we go through all of these phases of consciousness. We have a lens of our world that we look at different times in our lives through those phases. And so we start off in life, survival is all important, make sure I'm fed, I feel loved, but survival is the big thing for me. And then we get to a point in life where relationships are all important. Normally from about 6 years old to your mid-teens is very strong. But relationships are always important. But that's just very strong. We want to wear the brand names, and we want to be in the in crowd, and we want to be in the first team, because belongingness and acceptance is a really important thing for me. And then when I feel part of the tribe and I feel accepted, I want to feel significant. I want to feel like I'm important. I want to feel like I add value. And suddenly we find people in their teenage years and into their 20s, late 20s even, want to stand out. I don't want to be the same anymore. I now want to be different. I want to drive a flashy car and live in a fancy house and all the rest. And self-esteem becomes important. And then I get to a point in life, say like, hey, what's this all about? Like, I've been chasing this stuff. These are the things that have been programmed into me about what relationships look like and self-esteem. And I start going through this like process of questioning these belief systems, and are they true for me? And that's what my parents said, and that's what schooling said. And I start having the courage to face up to those belief systems and say, hey, what's true for me? It's a stage we call individuating. It typically goes through in our sort of 30s and into sometimes our 40s, where it's very strong. And notice my words, we feel all of these at all times in our lives, but there's just little emphasis that happens. And then internal cohesion becomes really important, because when I question, who am I get to the point of accepting who I am and knowing what my gifts are and what I can bring to this world. And I start getting comfortable. Here we try and be like a whole lot of other people. We're chasing our heroes. And suddenly I get to a point like, hey, I'm unique. I've been blessed with certain talents and gifts that I can give the world. There's been nobody else like me in history, and there never will be anybody else like me. I have been shaped in a particular way, which actually sets me up to truly make a difference, to truly give back and invest in other people's lives and bring those gifts in a way that will actually make a difference in our world. And that might take me to a place of service, which is typically giving without expecting anything in return. Making a difference sort of happens large, big time in our 50s odd, where we're starting to think about, hey, I've probably gone as far as I'm going to go in life, and what do I want to leave behind, and what's my legacy? And in 60s, like, there's no more ladder to climb, there's nothing more to prove in life, and all my obligations are actually met, hopefully, mostly, and so my focus starts becoming more about service. Now, that's a very generalization, physiological development. I know some young people that are very heavily focused right up there in their consciousness, and I know some old people that are stuck here. Okay, it's a generalization, but I just want to give you a sense of that's how it works. The thing is that our companies are the same. Okay, that's a personal journey, but this is a great tool for us to get consciousness, awareness about our company's culture and where we are. So I'm going to just jump through that quickly. I'm not going to spend too much time on each one. But at a personal level, I'll value certain things like financial health and stability. At an organizational level, we value profit and shareholder value because that makes sure we're going to survive, that we are going to be able to continue being a company. You see these little red words? They are words that we would call limiting values. Those happen when we put an overexpression on that level. So some companies never get out of survival. Extreme example being a Chinese sweatshop. For them, profit is everything. They will squeeze those assets and their team members or employees as much as possible, and they end up exploiting. Okay, it's the overexpression of that. Those often show up when we have fear as well. I don't trust my people. I feel like we're going to implode. I'm going to micromanage and take control. So those potentially could come there. Level 2 is about relationships. So in a company, it's about valuing customers. It's about open communication. It's about just showing respect. And we can have limiting values of things like blame and manipulation. What's my deepest fear? To be excommunicated. At level 3, it's all about self-esteem. And so what does self-esteem look like for a company? I know what it looks like for me. It's like having confidence and success. But in a company, it's about us being the best. Having great practices, we're efficient, we've got quality, we're productive, we know how to measure ourselves. Again, we know what happens when you put a system on a system on a system. Eh? You get bureaucracy. Overemphasis on that level, or we're so good, nobody's going to touch us. And we become complacent and the world goes by. So those limiting values only show up at level 1, 2, and 3 because those are what we call our deficiency needs in life or in companies. When we move into 4, 5, 6, and 7, we move into what we call the common good, and we don't have limiting values. And so transformation for a company looks about like, hey, a teamwork, because when we work together as teams, we learn about differences, valuing diversity, accountability, innovation. All of those things happen at level 4, where it helps us transform. And then we get to this piece of internal cohesion. So knowing who I am, it's the same as we know who we are as a company. We have a shared vision. We've got shared values. We're building a place of trust and cooperation. And there's enthusiasm. I don't have to hide anything. I live my life out to its full. And so that would happen at level 5, where we're really starting to build that integrated culture. Level 6, making a difference. How do companies make a difference? Well, their consciousness here would be all about employee fulfillment. So that's different to what would happen at level 2, which is employee recognition, which is great job, well done. This is, hey, what inspires you? How do I help you live and experience that more? How do I help you be the best you can be? Helping people feel fulfilled. It may also look like partnership and collaboration, customer collaboration. We're going to really work to have a mutually beneficial partnership with our customers, not just satisfy you that you're going to come back and buy from me again, which happens at level 2. And then at level 7, companies say to us, hey, we're not here to serve, we're here to make money. Well, what does service look like for companies? It looks like us having ethics. Ethics is an interesting concept, but really it is seeking the morally right thing to do. It might mean I could make a ton of money operating in that African country, but I know that I'm going to have to pay huge bribes. It's going to go against what I believe is morally right. I may sacrifice that money. Giving without expecting anything in return, it's an act of service. Long-term perspective, future generations, what are we going to leave behind? And sometimes I know leaders who might say, I'm going to sacrifice a bonus because I need to invest for our company into the future and make sure that we're going to be sustainable for future generations. So that's a framework we use. And just to pull that all together back into the 7 levels of consciousness, is to say there's no right or wrong level, but it is about being intentional about our culture. I've mentioned that earlier. So let me go back to those investment managers. Those investment managers, the asset management companies want to be top quartile performers. They want to be the best. They want to outperform their competitors. They are very level 3 companies, what we would call level 3 consciousness. The people that work in them, well, they want to drive fancy cars. They want to go overseas every year. They are what we call the prima donnas. They are level 3 values-based people. No judgment on them. It's a perfect fit. Go and put that person in an NGO that wants to save the whales and make a difference. They'll hate it. Okay. And so the big piece of this is how do we get alignment between the people in our organization and the culture, how they're experiencing the culture. Good alignment means I can bring myself to work. Just a thought. Where do you, just in your own head, and we're not going to have a conversation about this, in your own head think about where are you personally on that 7 levels? Because we all are. And we can move. We're not static, and it doesn't work hierarchically. I was in a really sweet spot of making a difference in my previous company. I'd been there for 18 years. I'd been doing this work. I was invited into BW Leadership Institute. All of a sudden, I found myself in level 2 and 3. Why? So I had to rebuild good relationships. They were with people I hadn't known everybody. I had to reestablish my competence and confidence in that space. I had to learn a whole lot of new things to set me up to be back to where I personally would like to be. We move around. It's not a static thing. Interesting for you, where do you experience AFGRI predominantly? And maybe just while I put that up there, where do you think AFGRI is? And we're never at one place again, there's a spread, but where would you think AFGRI is predominantly at the moment?
Probably at number 4.
Probably number 4, so a lot of transformation.
A combination of organizations.
Yeah.
And
one of our subsidiaries called Limang, whose vision or whose strategy is poverty alleviation. However, they do it through some of our subsidiaries like Unigrow, who's a leader in the financial space. And I feel that that is the combination for me.
Okay, good, yeah. So some transformation. Any other thoughts? You're too scared to say. Maybe I have to put Menti back up again.
I think we go between self-esteem and transformation.
Somewhere between self-esteem and transformation. Driving quite a lot for success, the measures, the targets. The bottom line is important for us. Our growth targets might drive quite a lot of level 3, but also the understanding we need to transform, we need to innovate, we need to be better at what we're doing, continuous improvement, working as teams. Interesting, what I haven't heard called out is that internal cohesion piece. Like, are we one? Are we different? Are we separate? Are we building that cohesion within our pieces? Really starts talking to that integrated company that you called out earlier that you would all like to be part of. And this gives us a framework for understanding what may it take for us to get there. That there's no right, as I said to you, there's no right and wrong. What we have found through our research of doing these surveys and assessments and understanding companies and where they are across the world is full spectrum consciousness are actually the companies that are really transformational, very successful, long-term value. Their team members love working in those spaces. They have low turnover. Full spectrum consciousness is a piece for us to really always think about, because that is fully sustainable. That is a space of well-being as we get all of that together. I'll give you a sense of a tale of two cities. and in a way it's cities, but it's because we actually do this in cities and countries as well. But if you look at those, and this could be a company as well, that's full spectrum. And imagine working in a place where people experiencing those values happening on a consistent basis. Making a difference, integrity, teamwork, quality, ethics, they're going to be successful, hey? I mean, it goes to say. This is one that perhaps is not so successful. So you see all those red words coming up, we call limiting words. Imagine working in a place like that. Maybe you have. I've worked in a place like that. I know what it feels like. And it ended up not being a good news story. If a company has this extent of limiting words, they're going to go bankrupt, or they're going to fail unless they're rescued. And so this is a great tool for us to understand measurement matters, and if we know where we are and how we can align, we can do a whole lot better. The real key point to this is if our employees' individual consciousness are sitting there and our corporate consciousness is here, it's very difficult to hire and keep people. And so this is a great tool for us to understand that alignment. The last piece I'm going to end off with here is come back to just now what I said about affinity and alignment. It is through leadership trust. We said earlier that culture is a reflection of the values, beliefs, behaviors of leaders. And if we want to shift that culture to integrated or enduring, it means leaders need to open themselves up to understanding what's their style and what may they need to shift in their own values if we really want to create that shift. And so to the same 7 levels of consciousness, we have, to the same descriptors, we have different leadership styles. So at level 1, you get to a great crisis director. They can manage us out of adversity and take charge and control. And you know what? When we're in crisis, I like that. It makes me feel safe. But when we're out of the crisis and they're still managing like that, boy, now you're over-controlling and micromanaging. And that's not a great place. Level 2 is our great relationship manager. They manage and can create great relationships. Our salespeople and sales managers are great, often relationship managers. We get our great performance manager at level 3 in self-esteem. And at this level, transformation, we are starting to see the bridge between traditional management and true leadership. If I look at all of these words here, there's very few values there that would fit into these 3 levels. They would typically fit into these. So transformation, we get our facilitator influences. They can influence for change. At level 5, our internal cohesion is brought about through inspirational leaders. Level 6, making a difference, are where our leaders are truly mentors and partners. and helping to make a difference. And level 7 is where our leaders are visionary leaders. Again, no right, no wrong. All 7 levels are important. All of those management and leadership styles are important in a company. What we do look for when we are measuring leaders is where do they think they're coming from, and how are people experiencing them. And again, if there's alignment, wow, that's great. That's how we experience what great leaders do. When there's misalignment, well, what's holding that leader back? What are the fears that are there that can really help that leader progress? So I'm going to just, for a moment, I'm going to just not go through all of these right now because I've spoken through them. I think largely the piece to mention there again are similar as we have found full conscious companies. Great transformational leaders are also recognized by people as being full conscious leaders right across the 7 levels. So to close us off and to wrap it up together is we have come to learn that if we want to shift cultures, it starts with the work of leadership. And we have this concept of the law of the lid. And the law of the lid speaks to this, that wherever the leader is, the associates, their team members are always going to be just below that law of the lid. And so we have found sometimes where individual consciousness shifts and our leaders stay here, if I hit my head too much on that, I'm going to probably exit. And so it's a great call on leaders to think about how do they evolve themselves? How do we move beyond the old management styles? And so much of our work is about not learning new things, but it's about unprogramming what we were told management looked like and to truly start showing up as great leaders. Your mindset toward people will determine how you think and how you lead. How would you draw the AFGRI or your organization chart right now? Where would you start? If you had to draw the organization chart, where would you start? Start at the top with the CEO, okay, and his team, okay, and typically when we show people that, what does it say? It says, yeah, I'm your leader and you work for me. We report into the top, and the most important people in this organization are the leaders. We work for them. We've got to satisfy their needs for information and reporting and accountable, etc. We have seen a trend in the world to moving to like flat organizations. But people get confused by the leader because like, hey, I'm your leader and we work together, but like we don't quite know where we're going. And I want to propose that we start changing our mindset towards people and flip this upside down. Who the most important people in your organization are the people on the front line. They're the people who your stakeholders experience every day. They're your brand. And they're the people we want to be the best they can be. And if we can flip this around and say, I am your leader and I work for you. Sure, can you imagine, like, I know my leader is working for me. I know she has my best interest at heart. I know she wants my South African operation we're doing here to really thrive. And I know she'll do whatever it takes to support me in being the best I can be. I don't work for her. I said, Mike, hey, it's your decision. You do what you think is right. I'm here behind you. I'm here to help listen. I'm here to coach. I'm here to help you think through it. But I work for you. I want you to be the best you can be. And so for us to really think about how we can start shifting our mindsets to being true servant leaders. And so to pull this together in a way is that shift, if we go back from toxic, rigid, good, great, endearing, and I spoke about inspiring excellence, what we do when we are in control is we're really just the leader is trying to make sure that people comply, they accomplish their tasks, and they meet their budget, and they satisfy self-interest. We move into that level 3 and good, which is I'm still the leader, I coordinate you to achieve personal objectives, to satisfy your self-interest as well. It's about me. It's about me being the leader, and you must make me look good. When we go through transformation, adaptation, we start shifting this around, and we start saying, hey, the leader is about motivating, innovating for that extra mile, for the common interest of the organization, to true inspiration where we got firms of endearment, making a difference, that we are really here, I'm the leader, to empower you to meet our stakeholder needs. Leadership at the end of the day is about relationships between people. And so the last piece I want to just say, like that piece of paper you put in your pockets, the best leader that you've had and the worst leader you've ever had. I want to ask you to put that worst leader, throw it away. It's not a leader you ever want to be. And use that best leader as a benchmark for you to think about. One day, when we're having a session like this and we ask people to do that, is your name going to be on the best leader or the worst leader? I want my name to be on that best leader list. My name to be on that, hey, what do great leaders do? It takes work, it takes consciousness, it takes sacrifice, but the rewards are incredible. And so to close with this quote, a true leader walks the path of the heart, the caring part, inspires others to work towards the creation of a better world. That's what we're here for. And so that's what I encourage you with. So I want to thank you. I know it's been a fairly long session with quite a bit I wanted to just share with you and impart. Well, thank you.